Today, we're excited to welcome Doug Kridler, President and CEO of the Columbus Foundation, to our stage here at Dawson. And it is good to be back at Dawson. As a reminder, we will pick 10 random registrants from today's program to present Crimson Cup coffee and tea gift cards and coffee. So thank you to Greg Hubert and his team at Crimson Cup for this generous gift. Be sure to stick around for our closing comments from Pat Cornelius this morning, as he will announce today's winners. I'd now like to welcome Jennifer Griffith, Regional President of First Merchants Bank, to introduce Doug Kridler. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And congratulations on 100 years. That's amazing. Fantastic. And thank you very much, Dawson, for inviting us back, and thank you very much to the Chamber for hosting us this morning. We absolutely appreciate it. I'm pleased to be with you all this morning representing First Merchants Bank. We have been a really proud sponsor of the CEO Insights series and will continue to be. It's just a fantastic way to kickstart your mornings and get engaged with some really thoughtful conversations. Over the years, we've had the honor of hearing many unique and inspiring stories from leaders in our community, and it continues today with our guest, Mr. Doug Kridler. Doug's the 5th president of the Columbus Foundation, a community foundation serving Central Ohio since 1943. And in 2022, the foundation awarded over $300 million in grants to more than 4,400 charitable organizations in such fields as education and health, social services, community development, urban affairs, and the arts. As of 12/31/2022, the foundation's assets total $3.2 billion. Doug is also an independent director and chair of the investment committee of Nationwide Mutual Funds, with over $90 billion in assets under management in an array of mutual funds, and also the former member of the Business Advisory Council of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. Prior to joining the Columbus Foundation as president and CEO in February of 2002, Doug served as the president of the Columbus Association for the Performing Arts, during which time he oversaw the expansion of CAPA from 1 theater in Columbus to owning and operating 6 theaters in Columbus, the Chicago Theater in downtown Chicago, and the legendary Shubert Theater in New Haven, Connecticut. During his tenure, Doug undertook restorations of the Ohio, Palace, and Southern theaters and produced a wide-ranging selection of over 1,800 concerts and events. He's an incredibly busy man. Before his selection as CAPA's president, Doug was part of the national campaign for Senator John Glenn's presidential campaign and the worldwide tour manager of the Cleveland Orchestra, as well as the concerts director of Blossom Music Center. It's 18,000-seat summer home, and he's the past chair of the International Society for the Performing Arts, an international organization of leading arts professionals from more than 50 countries in every region in the world. Do we have any performing artists in the audience today? Congratulations, we love that. Doug received the 2023 Community Visionary Award from Central Community House, the Community Shelter Board, Mel Schottenstein Leadership Award, was named a champion of diversity, CEO Magazine CEO of the Year, and has been inducted into the Central Ohio Business Hall of Fame and included in the King Arts Complex Legends and Legacies. Kridler has received the Governor's Arts Award and the Columbus Foundation Award, has served on the boards of the Columbus Area Chamber of Commerce, thank you, CDDC's advisory, sorry, I'm a banker, and Experience Columbus, for which he also served as chairman and is the member of our Columbus Partnership. Doug earned a Master of Fine Arts degree in Arts Management from the University of Utah, on a Ford Foundation Fellowship, and a Bachelor of Arts degree from Ohio Wesleyan University. It is now time to please join me, welcome them, Colleen and Doug.
I've been looking forward to this because so much of what you've done has had a direct impact on this city. When you think about the theater, when you think about the Columbus Foundation. And so I'm going to take you back a little bit. Mm-hmm. I heard a little bit about your education, but how does somebody get started in the way that you ended up? How did this all start for you? Did you have a fascination with entertainment, or how did this start?
Well, I want to start with a thank you to you because it is such an honor to be interviewed by Colleen, who brings so much value to this community across the board, and has for a good long time, which is fantastic. So cheers to you.
Thank you very much. All I did was get old.
Well, and I want to thank the Chamber as well, because really for many years, decades, I've been participating with the Chamber in a number of things, and they do remarkable work. In 1989, I remember right where I was sitting at the Hyatt Regency Ballroom when Mel Schottenstein, at the annual meeting of the Chamber of Commerce, really in his wonderfully inspiring way said, we need to make sure that Columbus, Ohio is a place that our kids want to come back and stay and raise their families. I mean, he was really, I just remember the moment vividly. So I'm happy to say that 2 out of our 3 children are and the third is in Boulder. But I also, if you just indulge me for a second, I want to pay tribute to my wife, Monica, because I would not be here on the stage. You would not be talking to me. You would not have come here this morning if not for her. And she created something called Momentum 21 years ago that has served tens of thousands, primarily of Columbus City School children, 4th grade and around that, during the school day to create, you remember, no, some of you won't, because of age differences, but Sly and the Family Stone had Everybody is a Star song. And one day after a performance, an adult that had gone to a performance was going down the escalator at the Vern Rice Center, and behind them were 2 of the students that had just performed. They were going to their buses. And the one student, this is 4th graders, said to the other as they're going down the escalator, yesterday, we were nobodies. Today, we are superstars. And there's a big thread in all of that for her work, and I just want to say thank you, Monica, for all that. And then I guess I want to thank the audience, right? So I thought about this, my goodness, you spent money to be here this morning. And I thought, yeah, to me, first of all, that's just like surprising as heck, because every time we take the stage at the Columbus Foundation, we're thanking others. And I don't have it like annual, state of the foundation speech or something like that. And to think that you would find it interesting enough to take the time to be here and to pay money to be here is remarkable. And then I thought, well, yeah, $40 or $60, which is an incentive. You should join the Chamber, right? Because you could, you save money in all sorts of ways, but including. So I looked up last night. I pulled out of my files a couple of contracts that I signed for concerts that I produced the year before I came to Columbus. And I wanted to compare what you paid for tickets, for your ticket today with 3 contracts. And you can see each one's like 30 pages long. These are the various contracts. So
we want to see the riders.
Well, yeah, we could go over those for sure. So the first one's Neil Young. To go to Neil Young, so this was at Blossom Music Center. I was concerts director and assistant general manager, and produced the concerts and signed the contract for Neil Young. So this is a year before I came. If you know Blossom, they have seats under a roof and then a lawn. So the seats under the roof, so premier seating, $13.
What year was that?
83.
Wow.
So Joni Mitchell, $11. And it goes on and on. So John Denver, the whole range, Earth, Wind, Fire, and so on and so forth. So to think that, I thought, well, you spent $40 at least on your tickets, and you could see Joni Mitchell, Eric Clapton, a contract for him, any of these artists, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, what have you, Whitney Houston, for $13, and you spent $40 to be here. And then the light bulb went on. That $27 of the reason you're here is because of Colleen Marshall.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
that's,
I'm
it
sure.
all made
I'm
sense
sure.
then.
Now I
So-
get it.
So I have a few questions for you, Colleen. All right.
No,
So,
but I do want to
I
ask,
will.
why you have those in your hand?
Because
Give
I
us
thought-
some dirt. Who was the most difficult person you ever had to deal with?
Okay. There are a number of different answers to that. The one that was the kind of that blew up the most was an opera singer named Jesse Norman. And oh gosh, this would take a long time to tell. But basically, the manager for Jesse Norman wanted me to present Jesse because we had developed, in addition to the pop music and everything that we were doing to try to make Kappa work financially, I also curated a lot of Ohio debuts in a state filled with great orchestras. The Ohio debuts in recital of some of the greatest classical performers in the world. And so this manager, who was legendary, Jesse Norman, wanted to be on the series. And I said, not until you come to Columbus. So I came from the Cleveland Orchestra, and I knew that business and some of the needs of the artists, which are legitimate. But they're, you have to be really careful and tend to them. I said, the day that you come to Columbus and you select a hotel and find the hotel that she will stay in is the day that then I'll contract with you to bring her. Okay? So I go out the day she was to arrive, I go out to the airport to meet her just to say hello, and then I knew her manager was in town to also greet her and then take her to the hotel. So they got that part. Why is the hotel important? Not because of how beautiful the hotel has to be. When I turn here, can you still hear me? Not because it had to be so beautiful, but it has a lot to do with the humidity in the room and the ability to open up windows so you could get humidity into the room so your throat doesn't dry out. Because it takes a lot to do, well, opera in general, but a recital. And so I get to the gate, and it ends up that it's a few minutes early, but I was there a few minutes early, and Jack is not there, the manager. And I'm like, okay, this is the one thing I wanted nothing to do with is the hotel. And so she comes off the plane, we go to the baggage claim, and he's still not there. And I'm thinking, and so her Louis Vuitton hard case comes chunking down the baggage claim, and I have a valet to help get to the limo that I had arranged for her. And I turn, and she goes, no, wait, there's more. And okay, so there are like 4 of these huge things. And so we pile them up, wedge them into the trunk, into the seating areas of the limo and everything. And he's still not there. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see this guy running, and he says, the hotel room that I had arranged for is not accessible to us. Somebody's staying over in that room. And so I booked another hotel, which should have been like this warning light to me. And so she says, why don't you come on in to the limo and go down to the hotel? I want nothing to do with this hotel thing, right? And he says, yeah. So I get in the car, I go down. So now I'm walking into this new hotel that he had at the last minute arranged for. And we go in, and all sorts of things about the registration were not good and not arranged for well. We get up to the room, and so the whole idea is adjoining rooms, like that blend into each other. And so instead of having the rooms open up and have basically a suite, the first thing she notices is you got to walk out of one room and into the other. This is not good. Second thing she notices is we open up the bedroom side of and it's at the corner. I won't name the hotel, but there's a sign. There's a sign right at the corner that's blaring into the windows going, Southern Hotel, Southern Hotel, Southern, and she just looks at that and she sits down and she says, you know, you take care of this. I have nothing to do with it. So fast forward, and I'll stop this, but fast forward to the performance itself, and there's an audience member who, he said this, that his wife had brought to the performance and was not used to opera performances. And Jessie, you know, she summons everything that she can muster into her roles and takes between and before singing, sort of. And he just thought this was like ridiculous theatrics. Got up in the middle of it and just threw his program on the stage. Now, this is a worldwide artist of the highest renown, and this became a big deal. Fast forward, she summoned, there are a number of people here from the Dispatch, Michael will appreciate this, summoned somebody from the newsroom to come over, and they got a city beat reporter to cover Jesse Norman and the insult of this program on the stage. But the insult of the program on the stage was bad enough, but it was all preceded by this other, and so.
You screwing up the hotel.
Well, right. So I'm getting to that. So ends up that the end of the she talks to the city reporter, says this has been a terrible experience in Columbus, Ohio, and so at the end of the night, I still want to say, you know, because you think about it, I didn't throw the program, I didn't select the hotel. It has nothing to do with us, the presenter. But I greeted her as she was coming up after the performance from her dressing room, and I just said, you know, I'm just sorry the way that things developed. I hope you understand that, you know, this wasn't our doing. And she said, my life has been perfect until Columbus. Ends up that she had thrown a vase through the mirror and, you know, so all that kind of stuff. So that's anyway, I'll stop there. But there are a lot of challenging performers that I got along with really well.
That could be the name of your memoir. My life has been perfect until Columbus.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But Michael Scheer, who's here from the Dispatch, his family's from Fremont, Ohio. That's where I'm from. Elon Sims, the chief of staff of the city, is. I say that Elon was a track star. I ran track. But Fremont, I did a speech for the 25th anniversary of the community foundations of that county in October. So I had to, you know, reflect a little bit before I gave the speech about my time in Fremont, and I counted them up. I had 11 jobs growing up. Now, Clara, who's with us, our daughter is with us today, if you take Clara, her two brothers, and add up the number of jobs they all had in one-to-one number, it's 2. Now, why is that? Now, she's one of the hardest working, extraordinary VP of people, you know, culture builder professionals that I can imagine. So it has to do with sports. And all that, just, you know, you got to go to this camp and you got, you know, so you end up all the times filled with this kind of stuff. Now, she was 4 years starting goalie for Purdue women's soccer.
Oh,
so
good for you.
And her brother Fred was captain at Kenyon lacrosse, and her other brother Lex was played Division I lacrosse in Hobart, upstate New York. And so I'm not saying that it's any better, but it's interesting. So I sealed blacktop. I get this, just looking at the average age here. I delivered telephone books. So these were things that had everybody. And you think about that, how amazing that is. If you meet, you know, hopefully you met somebody today that for the first time or second time, you want to look them up. How do you look up? I mean, you might be able to look up their email address. I get that. But if you want to look up their phone number, you can't. Back then, you have a name, you look it up the phone book, and you call them, you know. But anyways, yeah, phone books, like a part of America's history, and I delivered them through the ice and the cold, you know, which is actually literally true. or hauling these things around. I worked in a whirlpool factory on the assembly line, and this is just classic. So I really wanted to achieve. And so it was during the summer, actually the best job you could get in the region in terms of compensation. I was fortunate my grandfather worked there. And so I don't know if that helped me. Nobody actually told me that, but somehow I was able to get a summer job. And so people would be off on vacation, and person in my position would take their place on the assembly line, which was, you can get by okay in this situation. It was Kenmore washers, being able to, the people are not really close to you, but they're close enough that you can carry on a bit of a conversation and so forth. And I'm doing my best job each time. And so the next time there was an opening, pretty soon after I started, was a unique position, which was underneath the assembly line. The only position, you lay down in this rotting, sweaty rubber mattress. You got a vice grip on one side and you have C-clamp on another, and you wait for the washer to go over you. You take the C-clamp, you put it on the tubing, you put the tubing onto the fitting, and then let go of the vice grip, and you do that.
That sounds fun.
And you have nobody to talk to, and it's 8 hours. And so, I nailed this thing. and I did so well, and it was, in the end, I found out I was kind of a source of amusement, because that's the job nobody else wanted. And so by me doing it, everybody didn't have to get assigned into doing it. And I was just like, I'm achieving. But anyways, the jobs went on and on. But the other thing that went on, you ask about the music. So this was a time when music wasn't just music. Today I listened to 12 stations over the course of a week online that are all individually curated. I can name the call letters of each one, from South LA to Martha's Vineyard and everywhere in between, jazz, classical, and new music in the pop vernacular. But back then, there was enough of a sense of the pulse of what was happening in the country there was a force, whether it be the riots in the cities or in Marvin Gaye writing about that, or Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young writing about tragedy at Kent State, what have you. There was something between all of that was in the mix that music captured that was hugely compelling to a kid in a small town. It represented like a life force.
It was unifying, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
It really, I agree with you on that, because I think we're of an age. So I think that music at that time was so much of the message. Is that kind of when you became like enamored?
Yeah, absolutely. What was interesting about it, and I did mention this one other time, and so pardon if you've heard it, is that there was no local radio station. There was not then a Toledo rock and roll station. And so I had to listen on AM radio to CKLW in Detroit, which meant I had to find, there was not at night, there's clear channel stations for those who remember that concept of the AM, that St. Louis, Boston, New York, Detroit had clear channel, New Orleans had clear channel stations that at night you could actually get more clear and hear them. It's not shortwave, it's just AM radio. But anyways, during the day and so forth, to listen to hear the music of the time on the radio, I tuned my brain to hear the music through the static. And I like to think that that's, a metaphor for all sorts of things. Is there, in any kind of thing in life, there's a lot of static, and you got to sort of find the essence. Alonzo King, who is a choreographer of a company called Lines in San Francisco, was quoted over this last weekend about that's important that you, in your life, you tap into that river that is inside of you. And so finding through the static, if you will, finding that, and that played a role in a number of decisions. But anyway, so Fremont was, sort of formative in both of those ways. I went off to college to answer the music part of your question. And immediately, the second day of college, I selected the school up north, Ohio Wesleyan University. Deliberately, because I knew they had a concerts committee, and I wanted to do something with concerts. So they had an activities fair like the second day of college, and each one, I don't know, hiking committee, debate committee, whatever, along this long walkway. And so I couldn't find the concerts committee. And then somebody finally told me, well, it's called the social committee, which should have been a hint. So I find the table, and it's these two guys who are just beyond cool. And I'm from Fremont, Ohio. I am not beyond cool. I'm not even I'm negative cool. And they spot that. They get the reading, whether, I don't know, whatever the cues. And they completely ignore me. I mean, I'm asking them questions. Like, is there a sign up? Like, and just blew me, totally humiliating. And so instead of letting that define me, or determine that I was just going to accept that, I found out from somebody at the activities union when they were meeting. I showed up. Again, this is the social committee. They're in this because it's cool and they have other cool people with them. And so I just sat in the back. First thing that happens in the meeting is this guy stands up and he says, hey, this is the first meeting in the fall. I know I signed up to do the film committee last year for this coming year. But I started to look at what you got to like put flyers around the dining rooms and the dorms, and you got to run the projectors. I'm not doing that. And they're like, you got to do it. You said you were going to do it. That's what we're depending on. So I'm not doing it. That's like, it's a bunch of work. I'm not going to do that. And so they said, all right, who's going to do it then? We've got to do it as part of what our mandate is. I'm like, raised my hand. Nobody else raised their hand. And they look around and come on, somebody needs to do it. And then they literally said, one of us needs to do this. Who's going to do it? Nobody would. So finally they went, okay, you do it. And so within 1 year, I was chair of the committee, and this sounds like braggadocio. It's just about persistence. They're trying to think who the actor was that said in this last week. I mean, a lot of people have said things like this, that so much of success is persistence. They might have to have a modicum of talent or expertise, skill, in your field, but a lot of it is about persistence. And I just persisted and led the committee as of the next year, changed it to Major Attractions Committee, and then started doing concerts. And I'll keep on going until you tell me to stop. But so the first concert was Bonnie Raitt in Little Feat. And Little Feat was really big on college campuses back then. Lowell George, who since passed away not too long after that, by drug overdose, was this slide guitarist. It was just awesome. And it's a short story, but it's a kind of a meaningful story that is among the lessons that I learned that were formative in that business, which is they call me the night before the concert. It's sold out, so fabulous. That hadn't happened at the school for a while, and everybody was supercharged. They call me up and say, hey, we're at the hotel. We got into town tonight because we had a day off. Do you want to come by the room and chat up with the guys? And I'm like, oh, sure. This is cool. I gotta hang out with the guys. So I get there and knock on the door and nobody answers. It's over, they're partying inside, whatever. Finally, somebody answers the door. I walk in, and just suffice it to say that after a quick greeting, the partying went on and heavily. And I just said, I'm out of here. So I just quietly left. They didn't notice. I just quietly left because it seemed a little on the side of too much. So fast forward to the audience is coming in, the chamber's almost full, and somebody comes and finds me and says, hey, Little Feet is here. And I go, great, because they were going to open. And they said, well, not really. And I said, what? And he said, you need to go see them. And so their dressing room was the president's conference room. And the same thing, I knock on the door, I hear, here, and this, and nobody's answering the door. Finally, I open the door a crack, and these folks are like not even conscious. And literally, two of them are getting sick in a moment. And they then passed out on the conference table. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So I went and found the road manager, and I said, this is my first concert, right? And it's sold out. This is like a dream come true. And now they are not going to be able to perform. And so I find a road manager, and I said, hey, in the dressing room, and he said, Doug, he said, follow me. And so he walks me around to the backstage door, to the door on the stage, that is, not the outside, and opens it up about 1.5 feet, at which point people saw the door open, they're like, but he opens it up 1.5 feet, and he said, you see that line on the floor, the door jamb? And I said, yeah. He said, there's a big difference between this side of that line and that side of the line. They'll be just fine. And I'm like, that can't be, to myself, that can't be. I saw them. He said, you go out at 8:05 and announce them on. And you just go out at 8:05. I said, but 8:05, announce them on. So I walk out there. They're nowhere to be found. When I walk out, like, let's just say I was walking here. Nowhere to be found. And so I walk on stage, and I try to stretch out the time because they're not back there. I know they're not back there. And, the audience, after like seeing me at first, I'm like, and I say about, 10 sentences, and it's getting a little diminished. And then it's like, yeah, okay, dude, So finally, I just did what he told me to do, which is to say, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big Ohio West and welcome to Little Feet. Nothing. The door opens, they bound on the stage, and they just nail it. So what are the chances, 1,800 concert, that my very first concert, that lesson would be learned? And so, anyways, it went on from there. To answer your question, I guess, sequentially, I ended up sort of seeking adventure, and I was going into law school, but my dad was an attorney. But saw this thing about arts administration, took a flyer on it. I had worked out at the Grand Canyon summer, so I liked the West. And literally, everybody thirsts and lives for the moment when somebody gives them a chance. And you hope your kids, whatever, your friends, that everybody, at some point in their life, somebody gives them a chance, the first job, whatever. In this case, I met none of the criteria of this program, because it was about bringing professionals from the field back into academics and doing this. The Ford Foundation had done this great study about the ultimate training ground for tomorrow's leaders in the arts. And so I asked the night after my master's defense, which was the night of my master's defense, which was the night before piling everything in the car and going to Blossom to start to produce those concerts. I asked the head of the program, why did he, because like everybody else is like older that's coming back into the work, to the training, and I didn't fit any of it. And he just looked at me and he said, because I had a sense that you would do something special with it. I mean, what a gift. What a gift to have that experience.
To have somebody believe in you
right.
before you believed in yourself.
Right, exactly. And then I know there are a number of nonprofit. The only other thing on that journey that I just want to mention is business has always been important to me. I've always enjoyed business, and I'm driven by mission, but I enjoy business. And so one of my great motivations was in coming to Kappa, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy. We couldn't meet this is all pre-me, that because they expanded it and overdid their budget and all this, is to, like sort of prove on behalf of the nonprofit world, do my part to prove, not singularly taking it, but do my part to prove that, like, nonprofit is business too. And you can be smart, savvy, resourceful, tough, mindful of scale, all the things that a successful for-profit business person is deferred to as having unique skills on. I'm sorry, there are nonprofit leaders across this room who are, let me, instead of my words, Jim Collins, who wrote From Good to Great, million seller, said to me before I introduced him at a small conference that he was starting to research. He wrote From Good to Great in the social sector. It's a monograph as opposed to a full book. It's wonderful. It's now 15 years old. And he said that he's always studied for-profit leaders in businesses. That's what all of his books were about. And he has a whole team doing it. But they were studying nonprofit leaders, and he came to realize that he had more respect for the nonprofit leader who operate an organization, the resourcefulness, creativity, marketing ability, the passion, the hard work, and so on and so forth, than he did the top CEOs of top corporations in America. And it's true. And so, I had to battle for every concert. I had to battle for every deal. I took my little Fremont self up to 42nd Street in New York City. I somehow created a way to meet with the top theatrical guy at Disney and said, you know what? We can manage the Chicago theater for you and take you out of, they had a series of predicaments there with Mayor Daley, and get you out of the papers and help that Chicago theater sing. And somehow, and I know the guy could see it in his eyes. He's looking at me and saying, who the heck are you? Telling me that you think you can, and they gave, I just saw Greg Ubert up there from Crimson Cup. The other reason why your $40 was worth it today is 27 Colleen, 3 me, and then that Crimson Cup coffee, that free Crimson Cup coffee. I enjoyed it every day. Anyways, so somehow I convinced them to do that. Well, that's not nonprofit. They weren't sitting there across that table, I guarantee you, saying, wow, this guy seems earnest and he's mission driven. No, they wanted the goods delivered.
Yeah.
And I got a no-risk deal out of taking over that theater, which what did that do? That expanded the purchasing power of that I had for Columbus. So, I don't know what your musical tastes are in the room, but I'll just choose an artist, Sting. If I go to CAA and say, hey, Sting, we need a Columbus, back then, they'd say, yeah, we're only doing 13 dates. Yeah, I can't fit it in, but we need the Chicago. And I said, well, yeah, we could do the Chicago theater on this date. That would work, but only if you do Columbus. And they go, no, we can't do that. And so they would be back and forth. And sure enough, we'd get on the itineraries of, you saw Tracy Chapman at the Grammys, or those of you who watched the Grammys. Awesome.
She was great.
Did her first tour, and because she stopped touring. So Columbus was one of those cities that got to see her when she was touring with Fast Car. Luke Combs did the remake of it. And, I could go on and on about the number of artists, but there's so much about that. I think that to be defined as something less than, because in our sector title, there's a something we're not. we're non-profit. And so right up the get-go, it's not asset-based, right? It's not skills-based. It's not, now, we all know to love and admire our nonprofit leaders because of their commitment to vision, but it doesn't mean it's at the sacrifice or diminishment of business skills.
Yeah, I've always thought nonprofit doesn't mean non-success.
Right.
And that's important when you're on boards to remember
Right.
that. I want to ask you about Ohio Theater. You touched on that. There was a time, when you look at that theater now, and I know when performers come in from New York, they're blown away by not just the size of the theater, but the restoration of this ornate theater that really is just a jewel. It wasn't always like that. There was a time, wasn't there, when we were a threat for losing that?
Yeah, let's see, it was pre-me. It was 69, and it was going to be torn down, and maybe instead of the Rhodes Tower being where it is, it would be there. And Larry Fisher, Scott Whitlock, Bob Carlsberger, Bob Lazarus sort of led the charge, the citizens' charge.
But then didn't you feel like you had a mission when you came in, not just for the theater and the palace, but to take the programming and make it worth saving?
Absolutely. And the first thing that I did, and you remember Gene D'Angelo?
Yeah, of course.
Gene D'Angelo was with the Dispatch broadcasting side. He was chairman of the board, and I said, in order for me to, because they recruited me, I had been accepted into Ohio State Law School and would put my non-refundable deposit down, but they said, you got to come and do it. And the one thing I find kind of astonishing is when they were recruiting me, I was walking down the street one day by myself, and I thought to myself, I had not read an article about it. I should probably think about, one, because I think I know how to program their way back to solvency, but two, because I think Columbus is going somewhere. I just had this intuitive sense about that, and why not rise with the market if I could, and I felt I could correct the course there. But the first thing I did is go I won't name names, but out to one of the great matriarchs of culture in our community, out to her house, and basically deliver the news respectfully that I needed to shut down the programming committee because they didn't know what I needed to do, the artists that I needed to do, nor, quite frankly, I didn't say this part, would they agree with booking the artists that I needed to bring to make the Ohio Theater something more welcoming to a whole array of audiences. It was very, very singular about the types of performers which were appropriate for the Ohio Theater in the minds of this small group of people. And so I had to...
Name names, come on.
No. So I had to
Just one.
gently disband that committee. And then my very first show that I did was Al Jarreau, which, wouldn't, for those who know Al Jarreau in the room, wouldn't think as being, out there or anything. But this was unusual because it was jazz. Al Jarreau is black. There was a lot in there that wouldn't have passed muster with the program committee and their old screens of like, who's appropriate? Let's do Paul Anka again. And so, and we were off and running from there, and it was...
what were ticket sales like for Al Jarreau?
Sold out. Yeah, no,
No.
From day one, we never lost money. We purchased the Palace Theater. We got the bankers to agree on things. I do want to mention around that and the whole nonprofit thing. And the partnership had Richard Edelman here, who is this business PR guru, does the trust barometer. And a lot of it is related to for-profit businesses, and business leadership and the sort of, let's say, partnership membership, although it has partnership, has a number of nonprofit leaders. But in that classic for-profit business, kind of milieu. And so he, finds out from the world, what is, what are the ingredients of trust? And this year, his kind of central finding is expertise isn't enough anymore, and that it's about trust. And you build that trust through relationships and so forth, which is, to me, quintessentially, that river that I talked about that Alonzo King said to be in touch with, that's what ultimately led me to the Columbus Foundation. Because at the time, it was just 5 weeks after 9/11. And it was, in my mind's eye, parent of 3, all hands on deck time. We did not know what was next in the world, and some sense of within our borders, security and so forth. And that if this, and so they invited me. They had done a search. I wasn't involved in the search. I was the head of the International Society of Performing Arts and running Kappa but they asked me to dinner, and I was riding out there, and I realized it is all hands on deck time. And I found inside me that, whoa, wait a minute. It was like signing up for military service at a time of war. By the time I got to the Wexner's home, I realized that, you know what, I needed to be a lot more open to this than I had thought I would be. And, by the time we talked about that, there's other fun dimensions to that story. It was tapping into that river.
I want to ask you about Columbus Foundation.
Yeah.
It really is remarkable that a city this size has amassed the amount of foundational money that when you think of this $3 billion fund. When you compare it to other cities, I always feel like this is a city that gives.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of charitable events, and I see sometimes the same people over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
There's this core group of people who
Mm-hmm.
know the importance of giving. But overall, this is a city that supports and gives of itself. How do you think we compare with other cities? And where do you see the Columbus Foundation going? We're now the fastest growing city in the country, just ahead of Austin.
Yeah.
But where do you see the Columbus Foundation going to keep pace with that?
I think it's rooted in whether it's philanthropic support of, Bessa, the zoo, I could go down Goodwill, YMCA, and across Kid Again, that are represented in this room. Momentum. I think we have still retained our sense of place, and from that sense of place comes a connection, and from a sense of connection does bring care. From the sense of care means I want to invest in your well-being, and that we're all, these. If you just look at it historically about how cities rise and fall and so forth, it's kind of hard to argue that these aren't our glory days. And usually those are not permanent states. And so the idea that we are co-creating maybe America's next great city, or have the chance to, for everybody in this room, is such an extraordinary privilege, an obligation, and honor. And I think we're well served by I'll just talk about the nonprofit leadership, because if they weren't doing their job well, and being inspiring, but also perspiring to execute well and building that trust. We have extraordinary nonprofit leaders in this community. And I think, as I've said for years now, there's no effective philanthropy without effective nonprofits. And so if philanthropy is dynamic in this community, that's a measure of the capability of the nonprofit sector, not only leaders, but their organizations. But I do this thing, I go down every once in a while to other cities during the winter, like down into Florida or whatever, to speak to donors. And I actually don't talk about the Columbus Foundation. It's not like people think that we fundraise in a classical sense, and we don't. We're kind of like, to use a business vernacular, we're kind of like a financial services with a civic purpose. definitely grounded in community improvement for the benefit of all of its residents. But we have to be sophisticated about our knowledge of money investment and so on and so forth. And so what I say to folks is by sort of like the whole spirit of Columbus, I can still ask rooms like, who's the first woman to fly solo around the world? And it's like, Amelia Earhart, yeah. No, it was actually Jerry Mock, and she took off from Columbus and landed in Columbus. And so you have to retell this story a lot, but I'll ask people to say, yeah, alma mater, what does alma mater mean? I said, go Bucks, yeah. I said, well, actually, alma mater means nourishing mother. And so, wherever you went to college, good stuff, formative years, learned a lot, maybe set your profession and course. But, and I know we're running out of time, but at the same time, if you think about where you were nourished, I would argue that your alma mater, for many people, maybe many people in this room, the number of years, the things that have happened in your life and so forth in this community, your alma mater is this community. And if we can, at the Columbus Foundation, aside from our transactional sophistication and so on and so forth, and I say that not about myself, but about the 64 other amazing professionals. Angela Parsons is here, and head of DS, donor services, and Amy Beck, head of communications. Extraordinary professionals. Coach Diebler, interim coach of Ohio State, was interviewed 2 days ago after the big victory against Purdue. Sorry, Claire. And he said, I have a newfound respect for what it's like to be a head coach and have to care for so many people. I think, and of course, he's new, he wasn't expecting this job. This is just an interview where you can get one or two words. So I mean no disrespect to him, but I would change one word. Instead of have to care for so many people, that we get to care for so many people. Yeah. And that is the ultimate privilege of being, and I think that in a positive sense, the benefit and the motivation and inspiration of daily work at the foundation is that we get, in so many ways, get to support our nonprofit organizations. We get to understand our community better so that we can really know where support can be deployed the most effectively, and that we can rally through the Spirit of Columbus Awards, through the Big Give, through the Big Table Day of Conversation. We could help rally our community in a way that helps that connection be fortified. And I think the more it's fortified, we all benefit by that, because philanthropy is, going to be part of our solution. For all the great news economic development, that we have the best economic development shop in the world, I believe, here with One Columbus and the partnership combined into one entity doing what they do. That a lot of then the responsibility to train workforce, to help find solutions to affordable housing and so on and so forth, comes sort of down to the nonprofit sector. It's absolutely integral to whether we meet the moment.
I'm doing a follow-up story this week with a retired brigadier general who learned that he was a 3-time combat veteran, who learned that the frontline medics in Ukraine were not properly trained and did not have the proper equipment. His name's Arnold, Brigadier General Arnold. And he was with Special Forces. He learned that they needed equipment and training, that 4 of the 5 hospitals where they did trainings for medics had been destroyed. And he took it upon himself to fundraise here, starting in Columbus, but across the country. And when he was explaining this to me, he said, I want people to know they can trust what I'm doing, so I'm working through the Columbus Foundation. That has to make you feel good, that people know I want to do good work. And if I tie myself to the Columbus Foundation, the world will know that you can trust me. How does that make you feel as the leader of this organization that really is looked upon in Columbus with such admiration such respect and such trust?
It makes me feel anxious that I need to get back to my desk. I'm there literally every weekend day that we're in town, and we're in town most of the time. That's how I feel about it, is it's a responsibility. It's far beyond ourselves, but if we don't approach it with every fiber of our being to enhance the value of that trust to, it's not just even physically for somebody who has a fund. If we do it right, and we won't always do it right, but if we do it right and build that, it has psychological value for a community to have an institution that they can rely on in that way. And again, it does not make us perfect, but I can guarantee you this, just as going back to Fremont and 11 jobs, I will work with every fiber of my being to help it be everything that it can be.
And we have a question from Julianne Hobach, I believe, from CEO Magazine. Oh yeah, there's Julianne. Good.
Hi, Doug.
Hi.
You had talked a little bit with us already about how the nonprofit and the for-profit sectors are working together to help Columbus meet this moment. In your view, what are we not doing as a city right now that we should be to collaborate so that we can help Columbus take it to that next level of growth?
Well, of course, I don't know that we're not doing it at all. So maybe we could do more of realizing that great ideas are not the province of those with the top job. Great ideas can come from anywhere. And the more, we have all sorts of ways that we're dedicated to this. But, and it would take too long to explain them, but the idea that of more engagement, of honoring every individual's wealth, to work as hard as we can to diminish the barriers of opportunity, whether it be the racial wealth equity gap, the health equity gap, so on and so forth, so that ultimately people sometimes get organized around the conversation of poverty. The reason you inherently hate poverty is not just because of the differences in amount of money in a checking account if you have a checking account. It is because of what poverty's effect is on creating obstacles to reaching human potential. And so the more we can create an environment where more folks can reach their human potential, the more this community will prosper, I believe. And it's something that will never end because there's so many generations of systems and obstacles that have manifested through people's lives. But it is, I think, that tapping into, whether you're planning something for this downtown or you're planning something to benefit people, work with the people with the real knowledge to build out long-term solutions. And we're doing that through something called human-centered design work that a woman named Heather Sabaris heads up for us. But I wanted to, if I could, close with a compliment I got last week. And it's one that I feel like I should brag about. So I'm going to strip off all the humility of that I've tried to bring to this conversation and tell you that we went to an event, just a little event at Canine Companions, an extraordinary facility that has been built. We were leaving, and my wife Monica was leaving with one of the hosts, Mike Gonzarowski, who headed up another bank in town at one time. He said, Doug is the canine companion for our community. And except that he knows more than 46 tricks. There's just something amazingly wonderful about that. That it's not, the dog is never the star or the feature of anything. The dog is there to help you flip on the switch, to lower your heart rate, to be, and I think of that as our whole staff. That's it's not just me, but he knows me, and Monica was who he was talking to. But I mean, what an amazing thing to be thought of in that way, of being able to be relied upon. And like I say, we won't get it right every time, but we will definitely try with every fiber of our being.
Well, we want to thank you, and you deserve all the treats.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
I'm Pat Cornelius, a partner at Barnes & Thornburg, a longstanding partner of the Columbus Chamber and CEO series. We are celebrating our 15-year anniversary of being in the Columbus market and the Columbus community, our fabulous growing community. And I want to thank Colleen and Doug for a great conversation, giving us a lot to think about. And thank Doug and his team at the foundation that play a vital role in what's happening in Columbus and the growth in the community, being recognized as the fastest growing community in the nation. So, and now what everyone has been waiting for, and the people that get the $10 for free, it's the winners of the Crimson Cup $10 gift cards. They are Sharon Busey, Daryl Butler, Amy Simonello, Brian Duff, Michael Heller, Paul Geringer, Tiffany Lee, Maggie Matthews, John Olmsted, and Tom Schmidt. So if your name was called...
Must be present to win.
Yeah. So if you are present, please head up to the registration table, get your gift card. And thank you to Greg Hubert and the Crimson Cup team for their continuing sponsorship. Hope to see you at the next Chamber event, upcoming programs. Feel free to see the website at columbus.org/events to see what those are. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.